votre magazine dominical sur Equinoxe.
Opposition politician and president of Manidem Party, Anise Ekane's lawyers refute reports circulating on social media about his death while in detention at the State Defense Secretariat. However, they expressed concerns over his deteriorating health, stressing the need for urgent medical attention. The lawyers also condemned the restriction on his family members' access to him. Anise Ekane was arrested in the context of post-electoral tensions. And away from that, destruction and chaos continue to ravage Maroua in the Far North region, with angry protesters unleashing a wave of violence. The latest attacks saw public buildings set ablaze, including the Lekam office, the Maroua 2 divisional office, and the Kakatare Government Primary School. The situation remains volatile, with protesters determined to make their voices heard in the wake of disputed presidential election results. And right here in the city of Douala, residents are facing a harsh reality as the prices of essential food items, particularly perishable goods like tomatoes and vegetables, have sharply increased. Over the past 4 days, prices have skyrocketed, with a basket of tomatoes now selling for 10,000 francs or more, compared to the 3,500 francs to 5,000 francs previously sold. Our reporters were at the different local markets and will be giving us first-hand information on the situation. This is the 6 p.m. edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinoxe Television. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Once more, good evening, and thank you for choosing Equinoxe Television for presentation. I am Immaculate Fogwe. We begin with this sad story where tragedy has struck the Gamilikum community in Kumba in the southwest region, where a 14-year-old boy student known as Daniel Enongene lost his life to electrocution. The incident occurred this morning while Daniel was getting ready to head to school. The news of his sudden demise has sent shockwaves through the community, leaving family members, friends, neighbors in deep mourning. An investigation has been launched to examine or determine the circumstances surrounding the electrocution, and authorities are working to establish the cause of this tragic incident. Daniel was remembered by those who knew him as a calm and studious young boy whose potential was cut short in a moment of unforeseen circumstances, and may his soul rest in perfect peace. Away from that sad story, family members and lawyers of the President Anise Ekane of the Manidem political party are raising an alarm over his health condition, detention situation, and well-being. Arrested and detained at the State Defense Secretariat set in Yaoundé since October 24th, his lawyers say his health has not improved, fearing deterioration. They are calling for his immediate release and also proper medical care, as Fomi Armstrong Sanda tells us.
Barrister Hippolyte Meli is one of the lawyers of President Anise Ekane of the Manidem political party. After meeting with his client detained in Yaoundé, Hippolyte Meli says his detention condition, his health and well-being is a preoccupation.
Regarding his detention condition, he is currently held in a health unit occupying a room but with 2 gendarmerie officials permanently surveying him. This is even what we decry the most, because their presence alone is traumatizing and hinders a quick recovery. This arrest and detention is deplorable. This is not a good condition for someone with a well-known pathology. What he needs is the presence of his loved ones and family members, not uniform officers.
Barrister Hippolyte Meli confirms that Ekane's health condition is not good.
I cannot say that President Anise Ekane is very fine, because his health has neither gotten better or worsened. However, the environment is not favorable.
Considering the environment and his current state of health, his lawyer and family members fear and insist on his release.
Having security officers all around a patient and who are not his family members is stressful and can only worsen his health condition. These gendarmerie officials monitors every visitor to President Ekane and every discussion is done in their presence. Can you imagine that? We denounce his detention and call for his immediate release.
Anise Kane, the leader of the African Movement for New Independence and Democracy, Manidem political party, was arrested on October 24, 2025. The arrest occurred at his home in Cameroon's economic capital city, Douala. The reasons for his arrest are viewed differently by opposition political parties and the CPTM party-led government in Cameroon.
From Armstrong Sander reporting there. Meantime, residents of Maroua are living in fear after a night of chaos that saw public buildings set ablaze by angry protesters. The town of Maroua, since the proclamation of the presidential results, continues to experience violent demonstrations, especially in Maroua 2 subdivision on Wednesday, where protesters set ablaze the Lekam office, the Maroua 2 divisional office, and also the Kakatare government primary school, as Asa Luciliengu tells us.
Maroua in Cameroon's far north region has been gripped by unrest since the announcement of the presidential election results. Protesters, determined, have continued acts of destruction, mainly targeting public buildings. Late Wednesday night, around 11 p.m., angry demonstrators stormed the offices of the Lekam and the Maroua 2 divisional office, setting both buildings ablaze. Street lights recently installed along the Doualare Avenue were also vandalized. Just 2 hours later, at about 1 a.m., the Katakare Public School, still in the Maroua 2 subdivision, came under attack. However, the swift intervention of firefighters prevented the flames from spreading to nearby buildings and helped reduce the damage. Seni Ousmani, the director of Government Primary School, Katakare 2, explains.
Exactement autour de minuit 30.
It was around 12:30 midnight that we received a call from inhabitants saying that the school has been set ablaze. Immediately we called those who were around, and the information we received confirmed that a group of individuals who do not have good intentions, about 10 of them, decided to set ablaze the school.
Et leur intention c'est de mettre feu dans toute l'école.
An act strongly condemned by residents who decry the growing hardship and insecurity they now face.
Vraiment, ce qui est arrivé dans notre...
Honestly, what is happening is deplorable considering the problems we had before now, like limited benches, classrooms for students in a school that has 4 groups. We call on elites and authorities concerned to come to our aid. We are suffering.
Notre école est en train de souffrir, en train de mourir.
The situation in Maroua remains tense, particularly in the Maroua 2 subdivision, where fear continues to grip the residents amid growing uncertainty.
Issa Chuma Bakari decides not to back down on the fight for what he qualifies as stolen election victory. He says the fight continues. In one of his recent media statements, Issa Chuma Bakari announced the next steps coming soon. Babila Jonathan has more on this outing.
Officially declared second in the presidential election of October 12 with 35.19% of the vote, behind the incumbent President Paul Biya, credited with 53.66%. Issa Chuma Bakari firmly rejects the results proclaimed by the Constitutional Council. The candidate of the Cameroon National Salvation Front, who had already proclaimed his victory a few days before the official announcement of the result on October 27, denounces what he calls electoral manipulation and institutional bias. According to him, the Constitutional Council distorted the truth of the ballot box, thus depriving the Cameroonian people of their will in favor of the ruling party. Issa Chuma Bakari now promises a fierce struggle to do what he calls restoring the people's victory and put an end to the impunity that, according to him, characterizes the current regime. Lives were lost during the recent demonstrations in Cameroon, deaths that each side attributes to the other. Territorial Administration Minister Tanganji Paul, on his part, condemns the self-proclamation of victory by Issa Chiruma Bakari, as well as the calls for protest, which he qualifies as an insurrection. According to Minister Tanganji Paul, the latter is responsible for the demonstrations that resulted in numerous deaths. Meantime, government critics and observers blame the election management institutions and the administration for orchestrating the post-election tensions and violence via electoral fraud.
And prominent figures Jean-Pierre Bekolo and Martin Polibe have urged the government to listen to the concerns of its citizens. In separate posts on their Facebook pages, Bekolo stated that the disregard of the people's voices has rendered democracy elusive in this country. Polibe has called on the government to prioritize peace. Smajikan Gabriel has more on their outing.
In his outing entitled The Evils and Words of Power, Jean-Pierre Bekolo described Cameroon as a nation where the word democracy will remain a forbidden one. The film director criticized the fact that after 43 years, a man is being left in power, and when the people wake up, blames are put on foreigners, with the allegations that opposition leader Issa Chiruma Bakari and his followers Anise Kane and Jokam Chameni are being supported by Chadians and the Central African. The film director also questioned why semantic shift not only criminalizes all opposition and fuels fear, but also allows for the creation of enemies through the use of words. On his part, Martin Polibe, who is an intellectual, in an outing titled Imperative of Justice and Social Reparation, comes back to the current situation faced by the nation. These young people whose actions are unfortunately and wrongly dismissed as mere protests are not the problem. They are the glaring symptoms of a collective failure, the result of our lack of common sense and foresight. The intellectual says systematic injustice breeds incomprehension, and it gives rise to hatred and consequently the need to restore balance. Faced with the tragic reality, according to Martin Polibe, the time for sterile condensation is over. Now is time for introspection and restorative action. He adds, it's only through fairness, listening, and reconciliation that we will be able to heal our nation's wound.
And still on reactions on post-electoral violence, the United Nations Secretary General and Human Rights Watch have expressed deep concerns over post-electoral violence and reports of excessive force used in Cameroon. In separate statements, they have called for restraint. Babla Jonathan once more reports.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres expresses deep concerns over post-electoral violence and reports of excessive use of force. He deplores the loss of life and injuries among both protesters and security forces and extends his condolences to the families of the victims. He calls for a thorough and impartial investigation into these incidents. The Secretary General urges all political stakeholders and their supporters to exercise restraint, reject violence, and refrain from any inflammatory rhetoric and hate speech. He stresses the critical importance of safeguarding human rights and fundamental freedoms. He also calls on authorities to ensure a safe and secure environment where the rights of all citizens are protected and to ensure due process for anyone arrested. The UN Secretary General encourages inclusive dialogue to address grievances and preserve national unity and stability and resolve any dispute through legal and peaceful means. He reaffirms the commitment of the United Nations to supporting sustainable peace and development in Cameroon. In the same vein, Human Rights Watch tells the government authorities to immediately rein in their security forces, promptly and impartially investigate the excessive use of force and release all those wrongfully held. It backs this call with the United Nations basic principles on the use of force and firearms by law enforcement officers. It provides that police must use the minimum necessary force at all times. Firearms may only be used to disperse violent assemblies when other less harmful means are not practicable. Law enforcement officers may only intentionally engage in lethal use of firearms when strictly unavoidable to protect life. Senior Sahel researcher at Human Rights Watch, Ilaria Aligrosi, said, I quote, Cameroonian authorities should immediately instruct their security forces to not resort to violence against protesters. They should promptly and impartially investigate alleged use of excessive and lethal force and hold those responsible accountable for any killings during this sensitive time.
And in other news, residents of Douala have been hit with soaring prices of perishable food items, particularly tomatoes and vegetables over the past 4 days. A basket of tomatoes previously sold between 3,500 francs or 5,000 francs now sells for 10,000 francs and even more. Our reporter Mala Glory visited the local markets to investigate the cause of the price hike, and this is what she found out.
Price of tomatoes in the economic capital city Douala generally varies depending on its availability on the market. At Marché Sandaga, one of the markets known for selling perishable foodstuffs such as tomatoes, spices and vegetables, for the past days have seen only a handful of traders and customers with a scarcity of tomatoes and veggies. Wholesalers say vehicles transporting tomatoes and other vegetables from the rural areas to the urban centers have suspended activities due to the ongoing political tensions in the country.
Since from the southwest, tomato is not reaching here. From the west, tomato is not reaching here. We have crocodile remain in the bush. No way, no vehicle to carry it. Everybody's afraid. So the little that we can have here is going to be expensive. Most of the vehicles were burned. Consequently, other people are also afraid.
Retailers at the Dedo market say for them to make profits, they are obliged to increase the price.
This tomato like this, I always buy this tomato for the bigger one, the bigger basket like this for 3,500, and now today I bought it for 18,000 francs. 18,000 francs. This is 500 francs. If I don't sell 500 francs, 200, yeah, 250, yeah, I can't make profit. If I sell all the tomatoes, see, after the proclamation of elections, don't have to sell, so things are very hard. 5 tomato 500. I always say this 5 tomato 500 for 250.
The increase in the price of tomatoes, veggies and other food items, which to many might go on for days, is putting customers in a tight situation.
Even cabbage, I came, the place was so dry. You see me carrying cocky like this because tomatoes, you cannot buy it. You see me buying cocky. I came instead of buying tomatoes, I bought cocky because it's not easy. That's tomatoes now. What we used to buy for 3,000 francs is 13,000. So a normal Cameroonian will not buy that.
Their cry is for the political crisis plaguing the nation to finally end so that things can return to normal.
And now we take you out of Cameroon, where current tension is escalating in Tanzania as violent protests erupted in various cities, including Dar es Salaam, following the presidential election held on October 29th. The protests are largely driven by opposition supporters who accuse the government of blocking main challengers from participating in the polls. Meanwhile, former Gabonese First Lady Sylvia Mbongo Dimba and her son Noureddin Bongo Valentin will face trial on November 10, 2025 in Libreville's Special Criminal Court. And also in Nigeria, the U.S. consulate in Lagos has revoked Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka's visa. A roundup of all these stories with our reporter, Cedric Chaputu.
In Gabon, former First Lady Sylvia Mbongo Dimba and her son Noureddin Bongo Valentin will stand trial in Libreville. Their trial is scheduled to begin before a special criminal court on November 10, 2025. Last week, the lawyers for the two defendants, who now live in London, held an online press conference from Europe. They denounced the proceedings as a politically motivated judiciary and announced that Sylvia and Noureddin Bongo will not participate in the trial. In response, the Attorney General Eddie Minang confirmed on Wednesday, October 29, 2025, in a press conference that the trial against the former First Lady and her son will indeed begin on November 10, 2025. Elsewhere, a day after the presidential and parliamentary elections held in Tanzania on Wednesday, October 29, internet remains closed and several deaths are reported. Despite the cacophony imposed in the evening, anti-government protests continued into the night. President Samia Suluhu Hassan is facing intense criticism for her handling of the situation. On social media, these protesters shared videos of themselves alongside seemingly peaceful soldiers. Despite police calls for calm, the demonstrators managed to overwhelm the security forces. Some directly attacked ballot boxes and polling stations. Others set fire to a police station. And in Nigeria, Nigerian author Wole Soyinka, the first African to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1986 and known for his outspoken criticism of Donald Trump, announced that the U.S. consulate in Lagos has revoked his visa. The 91-year-old writer and leading figure in the fight against African dictatorships greeted the decision with irony, stating that he was very pleased with the cancellation. Reading the letter aloud to reporters in Lagos, the Nobel lecturer said officials had asked him to bring his passport to the consulate so his visa could be cancelled. He joked that it was a rather curious love letter coming from an embassy, while advising any organization hoping to invite him to the United States not to waste their time.
And that report done by Siricha Kuti on happenings in Tanzania, Gabon, and also Nigeria ends this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much for your keen attention. Have a wonderful evening in the company of more programs on Equinoxe Television. Bye-bye for now.